His Excellency Raja Muhammad Zafarul Haq Sahab, Leader of the House, Senate of Pakistan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. I am Asfa Tanveer, and on behalf of Institute of Policy Studies, Islamabad, I would like to formally welcome you all to IPS seminar on Pluralism versus Exclusionism, the case of rising extremism in India. Pluralism, which was focused on bringing every ethnic, religious, cultural group to one table, highlighting the similarities and respecting the cultural differences, is now being faded into exclusionist ideologies. This makes us committed to bringing together all the groups on one table and start a dialogue and debate. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now take this opportunity to request Director General IPS Khalid Rahman to please come up here and give his welcome words.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Senator Raja Zafarul Haq Sahab, Chairman of this inaugural session of the seminar, Ambassador Abdul Basit, our keynote speaker in this particular session, eminent panel of speakers, excellencies, members representing various organizations, faculty members from the universities and think tanks, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and dear students. It's a great pleasure and privilege for me to welcome you all to yet another important event of the Institute of Policy Studies, Islamabad. Today's seminar is devoted to a topic of crucial importance in the contemporary context: pluralism versus exclusionism, the case of rising extremism in India. Ladies and gentlemen, while most of you have participated in various IPS sessions and are well aware of IPS history and its working, let me take a few minutes to very briefly share some information about the Institute and its focus for the benefit of our guests who are joining us for the first time, and I can notice many such faces in this hall. Established in 1979 as an autonomous, not-for-profit civil society organization, IPS is dedicated to promoting policy-oriented research and providing a forum for informed discussion and dialogue on issues of national and international significance. Interaction, dialogue, thematic research, and capacity building programs are instrumental in our research endeavors. We operate as a self-financed think tank, counting on endowment, sponsorships, collaborations, voluntary services, and private donations. Ladies and gentlemen, at IPS, we are engaged in research in three broad areas: Pakistani studies, which covers aspects such as Pakistani society, education, economy, politics, and security; international relations, that includes regional and global politics; and third, faith and society, which focuses on religious trends, thoughts, and movements. You would agree that all these three themes have a direct link to the seminar we are holding today, and in view of the recent developments, this should be regarded as a timely contribution. We all know that exclusionism and extremism are not in any way new phenomena. Nevertheless, what could be regarded as new is the kind of rapid transformation the world over with respect to the ideas and practices of pluralism, particularly since the start of present century. The phenomena become even more significant in the sense that it is gaining strength even in those societies and countries which would declare pluralism and multiculturalism as their identity and secularism as their ideology. Take, for example, the case of Europe. In most cases, you will find a general trend almost across the continent that far-right parties are successful in attracting greater number of voters and consequently improving their numerical strengths in the parliaments. In Germany, it is AfD. In France, it is National Front, headed by Jean-Marie Le Pen. In Netherlands, it is the Party for Freedom, or PVV. In Italy, it is the Five Star Movement, and the list goes on, including Austria, Switzerland, Hungary, etc. Even Scandinavians, including Denmark, Finland, and Sweden, are no exceptions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is true that these far-right parties are still on periphery and not in the mainstream of power. Yet, they have successfully altered the political discourse, shifting it from politically incorrect to acceptable political narratives. One of the most glaring examples in this context was the response of European countries to the refugee crisis in 2016. The case of India is much more significant in the present scenario. We all know, ladies and gentlemen, that the politics of extremism and violence has remained all along a dominant trend in India. In fact, there has rarely been any waning in the events of abuse and discriminated treatment of minorities in India. Yet, except for major events, these practices remained less discussed until recently, as they had no apparent public backing from the governments. The attempts made by the BJP in last around 3 decades to assume government by playing the Hindu card has disturbed even the exhibitory balance of pluralism and secularism in India. While the Indian constitution still declared secularism as the country's ideology, the presence of organizations like RSS, Bajrang Dal, and Shiv Sena, along with their subsidiary and allied outfits at the societal level, and their increasingly violent attitude towards minorities and Dalits, backed by the government, is nothing but a practical example of contradictions in Indian secularism. Even the former Indian President Pranab Mukherjee had to acknowledge it. During his speech on the Indian Independence Day in 2016, he said, and I quote, "In these 4 years, I also saw with some disquiet forces of decisiveness and intolerance trying to raise their ugly head. Attacks on weaker sections that militate against our national ethos are aberrations that need to be dealt with firmly." This was in 2016, and reports of independent sources suggest that the contradiction since then is on further rise in India. How long the current trend will continue? Indeed, it's a difficult question to answer. What, however, can safely be assumed is that as long as the extreme behavior of Hindu nationalists persist at the government and social levels, it will keep growing and consequently weakening India from within. With India having more than 20% of its population consisting of minorities and another 25% of Dalits, neither it is possible to destroy that big segment of population, nor can they permanently be ignored. The scale at which actions against minorities are being taken, the possibility of having opposite reactions cannot be ignored, which has the potential of negative repercussions for all other segments of the society in India. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, given the fact that India is the second largest country of the world, according to its population, and is an important player in international politics, the discriminatory behavior with minorities will not only cause internal destabilization, but will also have far-reaching adverse impact on the region in particular and on the world at large. Under the given circumstances, the situation poses great challenge for all concerned, both within India and outside. This is the overall context which has led IPS to host this event, and I congratulate our team for their collective efforts and hard work which they have put in to make it happen. I'm glad that we have a galaxy of scholars and experts gracing the occasion. Through the deliberations, we expect to not only understand the dynamics of the rising phenomena of extremism in India, but also to measure the responses within as well as of the regional and international community, and also to deliberate upon the strategies and ways to respond to them. With this, I conclude these remarks and hope to have a very exciting session throughout the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. As rightly pointed out by you, given the fact that India is the largest country in South Asia, and the violence against minorities therein has the potential to disbalance the geostrategic conditions in the region and the world over. Now, I would like to request Ambassador Abdul Basit to come up over here and deliver the keynote speech.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Raja Zafar Haq Sahab, Khalid Rahman Sahab, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning and Assalamu alaikum. Let me begin by thanking IPS for inviting me to share my views on rising extremism in India. And I must begin by a caveat that do not expect me to upbraid India or criticize India, because I would rather prefer here to be more objective in my whatever I say about this important subject. Because India, no doubt, is a big country, as was mentioned by Rahman Sahab. It has a huge clout around the world. So we need to understand without any subjectivity as to what India is all about and what can we expect from India in the years ahead. Because if India grows extremists and that extremism leads to violence, then obviously all these have applications for not only Pakistan but for the entire region. So my job as a former diplomat and a person who has also served in New Delhi, I would try to share with you my own personal experiences as well in order to get to the bottom of the problem which our Western neighbor is currently facing. It is usually said, and it has become a cliche, that India is a land of paradoxes. And in my view, all countries, including Pakistan, we're all lands of paradoxes. But it is more said about India. Reason being that on the one hand, India has been able during the last 10, 15 years to become the sixth largest economy of the world. Yet more than 300 million people is still living below the proverbial poverty line. India has been able to send its mission to Mars, but I can tell you from my own experiences that thousands of districts in India are still without electricity. Even Prime Minister Modi, in one of his statements, mentioned that there is a village in the suburbs of New Delhi which still doesn't have electricity. India claims to have, one of the largest pharmaceutical industries. Yet you would find Indians struggling to get medicines, to get reasonably good health care. So these paradoxes, in my view, are not, and you would agree with me, that not limited to India. We also come across such paradoxes in Pakistan. But since Indians have this penchant to claim that India is a rising country, shining country, and Pakistan is no match, so we can then perhaps look at India more critically as to what India is all about. It is also said about India that anything you say about India, the opposite is true. So let me today say everything good about India so that you can draw your own conclusions about our neighbor. And there is no doubt that since its independence in 1947, India, unlike Pakistan, has been able to move towards democracy, strengthen democratic institutions, was quick to draft a constitution which gives reasonably, I think, good protection to all minorities. And more or less, it is considered as a secular constitution, and India has always claimed to be a secular country, where people of all ethnic backgrounds, religion, faith, they have equal rights and equal opportunities. And by and large, I would say that India has been more or less on the path to develop itself along secular lines. We can obviously, there are many events. India is replete with such events where you see violence against minorities, rights, and so on and so forth. And it is very easy to criticize India for all these things, that despite their secular constitution, they have not been able to give enough protection to minorities, as we have seen the destruction of the Babri Mosque Masjid in December 1999, and then riots against Sikhs, killing of Sikhs, also against Christians. So Indian history is full of such events, which would clearly show that India is not a secular state in its true sense, because minorities do face a huge problem at the hands of majority of Hindus. Now, we can always come across or can mention all these events, but that would not serve the purpose of this seminar. My idea is to highlight those variables, both dependent and independent, which I believe are the fundamental problems in India which lead to extremism. And the government has not been able to address those issues because some of those variables are inbuilt in Indian society. And unless India get to grips with those variables, it will continue to be very difficult for India to address the issue of extremism. And that is, I think, the focus of my talk today. We all know that India Indian society is built or is based on the caste system, which the late iconic leader Ambedkar, he was very critical of that, and he regarded the caste system or the social order of India as one of the most regressive in the world. So one of the reasons as to why India has not been able to deal with extremism, one factor is the caste system in India. Because it is inherent in that system, that socio-economic order, that if there is undue socio-economic mobility within that caste system, that inevitably generates tensions. And if there are no proper mechanisms to contain those tensions, those then ineluctably lead to extremism and then violence. Whatever we are seeing today in India under Prime Minister Modi is not something new. The leads have been, the lower caste or the caste untouchable, so to say. They have been, have suffered violence throughout Indian history. So it is not something new about it. So this is one area where which needs to be understood if we want to understand as to why there are problems in India related to extremism. Then obviously there is another important element which leads to extremism in India is the Muslim rule in India over the last, for more than 600 years. Hindu of India has still not been able to reconcile with that part of its history, that how come Muslims ruled India for over 600 years. So now whatever today we see in India, like changing names of roads from Aurangzeb Road to Abul Kalam Azad Road or so on and so forth, all these things are a reflection of that difficulty for majority Hindus to digest that idea, and somehow they would like to skip that period of their history, national history, as if nothing happened from 12th century to 19th century. So that is one problem with majority Indians, that they are still finding it very difficult to get to grips with this particular phenomenon. And hence, in order to, in their drive to skip that part of history, we see violence, we see extremism against Muslims, particularly against Muslims in India. The third phenomenon, in my view, or variable, is the creation of Pakistan, the split of the subcontinent. That also raises many, many questions. I see here Iftikhar Gilani Saab, who is traveling from India, and he's a Kashmiri. He would bear me out that Pakistan is a kind of, in India, it's a permanent fixture on the psyche of the Hindu mind, collective Hindu mind in India. If Shah Rukh Khan says anything or criticizes anything happening in the country, he is asked to go to Pakistan. If Amir Khan says that he and his family does not feel very secure in India, he is immediately advised to go to Pakistan. So anyone, any Muslim particularly, who says or comments on anything happening in India which is negative or has some adverse remarks, he or she is immediately advised to go to Pakistan. So Pakistan uh, is a variable which is kind of regressive as far as India's march towards progress is concerned. They have still not been able to come of age apropos Pakistan, because Pakistan, for most of them, has been an aberration, and that needs to be corrected. And this particular so called aberration has been given conceptual strength by organizations like RSS. And RSS, as you know, was not formed after India's independence. It was formed back in 1925, and this organization was heavily influenced by one ideologue, Hindu ideologue, Mr. Savarkar, who genuinely believed that India is a land of and land for Hindus, and he then gave the concept of Hindutva, the political Hinduness or Hinduism. So that led to the creation of RSS in 1924-25 by Dr. Hejwa, and we all know that since its establishment, RSS has been the force which propounded to make India a land of Hindu, a land for Hindu. And this continues till today. We all know that who killed Gandhi in January 1948. That was Nathuram Godse, who was also very much influenced by the RSS ideology. And then subsequently, you see many riots taking place in India. But luckily, Indians have generally been not very positive about the RSS as an organization. That is why still, after 70 years, we still see RSS, though it has a membership of close to 5 to 6 million people, it has not been able to deeply penetrate into the psyche of Indians. Having said that, RSS, since they focus on dedication and discipline, it has emerged as an important social and cultural organization. And that is what they do. They claim that they're not a political organization, they are a social and cultural organization which is promoting Hindutva. And they say so openly. And many of their leaders do suggest that even Muslims, should become Hindu as far as culturally, if not ideologically. So this is what the theme of, or the overall objective of the RSS is. Now we have seen that in the past too, RSS has been very active from the destruction of Babri Masjid to the Gujarat riots in 2002, and in which more than 2,000 Muslims were killed. So we have seen many such events in the past as well. But luckily, their political wing, the BJP, was never able to get majority or form government on its own. Though in the 2000 we have seen Mr. Vajpayee, 1999, late 90s and early 2000 we have seen Mr. Vajpayee or the BJP forming government as part of the coalition. But it was for the first time that Mr. Modi, BJP under Mr. Modi, was able to get a simple majority. And that was a huge, I think, in the context of Indian politics, it was a huge development for the BJP. And I think that changed the whole thing in India, hence the title Rising Extremism. What we have seen during the last 4 years in India, it is prominent Hindu journalists, businessmen, even politicians of different hues in India, and I could see that there is a worry in India that if Mr. Modi continues in power and the BJP, if they win the next election in 2019, things can worsen in the country. Because what we have seen during the last 4 years, uh, it is not really very encouraging in many, many respects. And I will give you one, two examples as to how minorities now feel in India, because minorities, they were already under pressure even before Mr. Modi or the BJP took power in 2014. But now, under Mr. Modi, who is seen as in Pakistan and elsewhere, and among the Muslim community in India too, as the butcher of Gujarat, there are serious concerns about the future of India. That if India continues on this trajectory, it may not be able to remain secular in a strict sense of the word. And the problem here is that since Modi fought election in 2014 on the basis of two planks, development and security, he has not been able to deliver, especially on the economic development agenda. Rather, two major fiascos, demonetization and GST, have not been able to achieve the desired results. So, on the economic front, he has not been able to deliver. So, majority, especially Muslims in India, strongly feel that there is a possibility that in the run-up to the next elections in 2019, one may see more violence, more extremism in India, because that helps the BJP to consolidate the Hindu vote behind itself. Because the Muslim vote or the Muslim vote bank has become irrelevant during the last election. And we were not surprised when in the UP elections last year, the BJP did not give not a ticket to a single Muslim candidate in Uttar Pradesh, despite the fact that the 20% of population of Uttar Pradesh is Muslim. But the BJP did not have a single candidate for the UP election. And even today, if you see the composition of Lok Sabha, for the first time, the number of Muslim MPs has come down to 22. So this is the lowest number of Muslims as parliamentarians in Lok Sabha. So this is all very worrisome for those Indians who genuinely believe in secularism in India. So in that context, since Mr. Modi has not been able to deliver on the economic front, it is possible that he would see more extremism and perhaps violence in India in order to keep the Hindu vote behind the BJP. Because the elections are fought in such a manner that a party which is able to garner or get 30 to 35% of vote, they are elected. So even the BJP last time could get only 31% of the total vote, yet they managed to get 272 seats in Lok Sabha. So this is what is going to happen in the months ahead, and we should be ready for any untoward incident or more violence against Dalits or Muslims in the months ahead. Similarly, we would also see manifestation of more Prime Minister Modi's attitude towards Kashmir would harden in the months ahead again. We have seen that how the mainland India is literally insouciant about whatever happens in occupied Kashmir. We have seen after the martyrdom of Burhan Wani the use of pellet guns. Hundreds of young, students now losing their eyesight, partially blinded, some, and over 100 people got killed at the hands of Indian security forces. So, Indian position vis-a-vis Kashmir would also harden. You will see in the months ahead. Similarly, dialogue with Pakistan, I do not see any possibility of that happening too, because that would not be commensurate with Prime Minister Modi's strategy and Amit Shah's strategy. Because if they engage with Pakistan at this point in time, they would lose the central point of their election campaign, and the rhetoric that quote unquote terrorism and talks cannot go together. So they have built their position vis-a-vis Pakistan on this basis, that unless, and this is not something new though, even the Congress government used to say the same thing for a post-Mumbai attack in 2008. But they are doing it with more vigor and they are more vociferous about their demand. So hence we would see hardening of the BJP, Mr. Modi's policy vis-a-vis Pakistan as well. And Kashmir will remain like this because, as I said earlier, the mainland India is least bothered as to what is happening in IOK, in Jammu and Kashmir. If Hurriyat leadership is behind bars for the last 8 years or they're under house arrest, they give a damn. And I hardly see Indian journalists of repute to talk about these issues. Though there are journalists, some people who would mention these things, that this needs to be resolved politically, but there is no urge to listen to the aspirations or to respond to the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So this problem will continue because extremism, in a way, pays off electorally. Extremism pays off in the elections. So that suits the BJP government and the RSS. And the RSS, which has now realized the importance of having power, though they claim to be a cultural and social organization, but lately I think they have understood the importance of remaining in power. Because if they are in power, and what we have seen during the last 4 years, that how efforts are being made to change the curricula in different school systems, and from their perspective to put things, historical facts in their correct perspective. So
to host this event, and I congratulate our team for their collective efforts.
Majority of India, so they are kind of trying to change the history as well, and this is again a point of concern for a majority of Indian Muslims. And if this trend continues, then obviously RSS will find it closer to achieve its objective of Hindutva, or making India a Hindu state. Though it is easier said than done, because Muslims, in India, there are about 170 million people, and 14.4% population is not easy to ride roughshod over them. There will be serious issues involved. We still do not know as to what is going to happen, because the next election, which some people thought was a shoe-in for Prime Minister Modi, no longer seems the case, because in Rajasthan, Congress managed to win a few by-elections, and then in Gujarat itself, the home state of Prime Minister Modi, Congress managed to do well, winning almost 70 seats there. So things are changing in India, because majority of Indians still believe that India's survival, its progress, its development is with secularism. If India moves towards more extremism, Hindutva, as RSS wants to do or BJP is being used, then obviously there are serious issues. I remember, visiting Mumbai on many occasions, and every time I visit Mumbai, I would find Shiv Sena people standing, or protesting outside the hotel where I would stay. At one point, they even did not allow me to inaugurate a Pakistani exhibition there. So there are organizations like Hindu Mahasabha, Shiv Sena, VHP, and so many others who are not these organizations do not have any support, huge support among the masses, but they do represent the mindset of the Sangh Parivar as to how they would like to tackle these issues, particularly the Muslim issue and the issue of Pakistan and then Jammu and Kashmir. As far as the caste system is concerned, for some people that provides the necessary glue for such a huge population to stay together. If there is no caste system, then perhaps India would fragment. To what extent that contention is correct is anyone's guess. But caste system in its there is an inbuilt mechanism in the caste system which does create tension in the sense that, for example, the Dalits, or the lower castes, and there are thousands of castes in India. There are castes which are untouchable, and you would be surprised to know there are castes which are unseeable. You can't even see them. So they are restricted to many locations where you can't approach them, you can't see them, so on and so forth. But in a changing world, in our transforming world, where everything is becomes available to you, this is an information society, so it becomes very difficult to deprive any particular group from moving ahead. So caste system in itself, though regressive in nature, I think the time will come when the Dalits and other lower castes would become more vocal about their rights as enshrined in the Indian Constitution. So this is a struggle which will continue for some time, and it will take, in my view, years to overcome these discrepancies in India. While India claims to be a secular country, and in many respects it is, because we still find Indian media very vocal about issues, and they do highlight these things. But this was a huge setback to see the BJP winning on its own the elections in 2014, and that has given more and more space to the RSS to propagate its own ideological agenda of Hindutva. And if the 2019 elections we still see the BJP winning, that would obviously reinforce this phenomenon, and we can see more extremism in India, which obviously is not good news for Pakistan, because luckily here in Pakistan, despite being an Islamic republic, religious parties here do not get in any election more than 6 to 7% of votes. We by nature are moderate people, and extremism, though there is extremism in Pakistan, but that is not at that scale, unfortunately. So we are lucky in that sense. But if India moves ahead and Hindutva gets more, particularly in the next election, then things can worsen from our perspective as well. So with these remarks, I thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Very rightly pointed out by Mr. Ambassador, that three factors that play a crucial role behind extremism in India are the caste system, the resilience or the resistance against the Muslim rule, and the creation of Pakistan. Now, I would like to request His Excellency Senator Raja Zafarul Haq Sahab to please come up over here and deliver the inaugural address. Please welcome.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brother Khalid Rahman, Director General Institute of Policy Studies, Ambassador retired Abdul Basit, President of IPRI Islamabad, Excellencies, distinguished members of the civil society and media, respected guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to address this esteemed forum that brings together a very distinguished group of people with such diverse expertise. I would first like to congratulate the Institute of Policy Studies for arranging this thought-provoking seminar. Your continued resolve to highlight critical matters of political and social significance is nothing short of a commendable service to humanity in general and Pakistan in particular. I am also deeply encouraged to see in attendance the many representatives of civil society and media. You are our tethers which institutions can effectively reach out and sensitize various segments of society. Ladies and gentlemen, it is about time that the notions of equality and human rights are prioritized above all other matters. It is time that our growing social, technological and political progress should reflect as a widespread model of pluralism and not that of currently prevailing exclusionism. For us as Muslims, the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam are full of messages and guidance that advocate the notion of pluralism to ensure equality and preservation of rights across all segments of society. Our religion teaches us the very foundations of basic human rights, harmony, and immense responsibility of judiciously governing all segments of society without any discrimination. It is something that democracies of today are striving for, but unfortunately, in our political and social economic quest, we are drifting away from the principles of pluralism. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not wish to single out India at this seminar, as many other democracies, including our own, face their own challenges to fight exclusionism. But the fact that India is considered to be the biggest democracy in South Asia, it represents itself as a case study from which we can all learn from. With its fading secularism and rising extremism, India represents to us an example of how democracies tread on undemocratic paths. This rising extremism in India is an indicator of a democracy skewing from its core principles of equality. The point to hold on to is that democracy is expected to reflect the varying opinion and sentiments of a society into a uniform reflection that serves all its segments. And when India is considered to be a leading democracy, in this region, a big question arises on its human rights violations in Kashmir and the frequent violence and extremism exerted within India against minorities, especially Muslims, Sikhs, Dalits. There is no doubt that Hindus make up almost 80% of India's population. It is unfortunate that rising nationalistic cries have led to a huge increase in violence against minorities, mainly based on caste and religion. I aim to remain non-political with my views, but an important factor that contributes to an increase in extremism also depends on the leadership. Unfortunately, Mr. Narendra Modi is the current Prime Minister of India himself has been the torch bearer of Hindutva. It thus comes as no surprise that during his tenure, the flag bearers of Hindutva have come out in great numbers and clearly with great confidence. This has fueled an increase in violence against the minorities in India under his tenure. Such trends easily help trace the path to a rise in extremism in India's case, and almost all national agenda of exclusionism, especially with respect to Muslims, is in full swing. We hardly find any country in the world which is exclusively inhabited by a single religious community. All countries, members of the United Nations, have segments of minorities also. But there are countries which are living in peace with their minorities, and they respect their human rights also. But the case of India and the new tactics of democracy shrouding their actions behind nationalism is deplorable. No political or social economic agendas should justify discrimination and extremism. Yes, there are differences in cultures, practices across every country. Yes, there are varying religions and skin tones in those societies as well. But what the modern democracies need to display is the art of carrying all these segments of society under one umbrella of tolerance and justice. With so many experts in attendance at this seminar, especially our brother who has been an ambassador and has practical experience of the Indian society, I truly look forward to the detailed intricacies of my simplistic analysis. I am sure that the seminar will educate us all on such a complicated yet crucial challenge. World faces on a whole. I am also certain that our cultural and social communalities with India make it the best possible example for us to learn from. I look forward to hearing your expert analysis and opinions. I hope and pray that Allah Almighty may guide us so that we can refrain from committing any form of injustice towards other human beings. I thank you all.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Director General IPS Khalid Rahman Saab to present mementos to our esteemed guests, please.